It's Thursday morning. I'm Bob Joseph, and it's time for the Johnson City mayoral candidates to debate the issues ahead of the November 7th election. Joining us now live in the studio here in downtown Binghamton, the incumbent mayor, Republican Greg Deemie, and his Democratic challenger, Andrew Holbert. And gentlemen, we welcome you to WNBF. Thank you so much for being with us today to talk about some of the important issues facing the residents of Johnson City.
Morning, Bob. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity today. How was vacation? Now that you're back, are you in work mode now, or are you still in vacation mode?
I'm in work mode.
Oh, okay.
Oh, don't think I was actually on vacation. I spent the last several days working each one of these questions so they could be handcrafted
on
with
vacation.
Beauty. Yep.
Yes, thank you, Bob. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited for this debate, and hope we hear some good ideas for the village of Johnson City.
I understand that you gentlemen had a debate, or at least a discussion of sorts, a few days ago.
Yes, exactly. Last Friday, at the JC High School.
Yes, we were at the JC High School. We met with the class of 2018, and they gave us their questions. So now we have a good feel of what the youngest voters in our district are concerned about.
And there's that lingering, shocking controversy over who makes the best pizza in Johnson City.
Yeah, that was a question that they threw at us from, as I say, the future leaders of our community in America. That's who we were addressing the other day. So, but yeah, it came down. I was Brizzetti's, and I think you were Rossi's.
I was Rossi's. Yes, I'm a little bit partial because I worked there in high school, but.
Hey, let's say for at least the start of our discussion today that we love them each, and that
there you go.
I think we both agreed that any pizza is good pizza,
especially pizzas made in Johnson City.
Exactly.
Well, gentlemen, we'll try to cover a lot of important issues facing the village voters over the next 45 minutes or so. First, we'll begin with opening statements, and by agreement, Mayor Deemie will go first. You'll also have the final closing statement toward the end of the hour. And Mayor Deemie.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Andrew, for being here today.
Thank you, Greg.
Good morning to all those listening in Johnson City and all the WNBF listeners out there. Again, Bob, thank you for this opportunity for the voters of Johnson City so they can make an informed decision on November 7th. I'd like to a little bit about myself, as I've been married for 37 years. I'm a retired technical illustrator with many years in engineering and design, 34-year career in that. It comes in really handy, though, in a lot of what you do with the village, the engineering background. Third-generation Johnson City resident, Johnson City High School alumni, Dick's Open Sporting Goods volunteer for the last 20 years, a fourth-degree member of the Knights of Columbus. I've been highly involved in the village in many ways over the last few years. It has been an honor to serve as the mayor of Johnson City. Under my leadership, we have begun a transition from decades of decline to a time of rebirth and investment. I see many opportunities unfolding, and I'm excited about our future. We need to think big in order to achieve success, but we need to start small. Small steps lead to future success. It may not be visible at first, but in time you will see success. Revitalization takes time and a lot of continued effort, years. It does not happen overnight. Some key factors for success: effort and initiative, a can-do spirit, high level of follow-through, perseverance and a firm commitment to succeed, vision for the future, able to look beyond the here and now, insight, business trends, population shifts, intense time management skills, and strong shoulders to ward off negativity. I believe I have all those skills and needed keys to move us forward. The only way we are going to be successful is to squash the negativity and all join in a common goal to emphasize the positive aspects of our area and foster pride in our community. The investors looking in want to see that we have a forward-thinking vision. It is all about marketing, self-esteem, and keeping the momentum going. We need to create a vision and work toward what we want to be, how we want our community to be seen, and set our goals and keep achieving them one by one. I hope after today's debate, I have earned your respect and trust and proved my ability to lead the village forward. Again, thank you.
Mayor Deemie, thank you. Andrew Holbert, your opening statement.
Thank you, Bob, for having us again. I just wanted to say hello, residents of the village of Johnson City and everyone else who is listening today. My name is Andrew Holbert, and I'm the Democratic candidate for the mayor of the village of Johnson City. I have been married for 7 years to my wife, Tricia. I have 3 young boys. I'm also a JCHS alum and third-generation village resident. I have a bachelor's degree from SUNY Cortland in physical education and a master's degree from Concordia University in coaching and athletic administration. Today, Greg and I will debate our vision for the Village of Johnson City. I believe we need a mayor with a vision for the future, a forward-thinking individual, not a reactionary, in-the-moment leader. We have pressing issues in the village that need to be addressed ASAP if we want to save our village. Crime is up, taxes are up, code is lacking, and the quality of life in our village is deteriorating by the day. I'm calling for change. It's time for code that works. It's time for safer streets. And it's time to get our taxes in check. And on November 7th, I'm hoping you'll vote for change and you'll vote Andrew Holbert for mayor of Johnson City. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holbert. And the first question goes to Andrew Holbert regarding taxes. What would you do in the next 4 years to minimize tax rate increases in Johnson City, or perhaps even reduce the village tax rate?
First off, to reduce the village tax rate, if possible, we got to go in and ask the department heads to come back with a 10% budget decrease if possible. You can't go in and say, hey, what do you want? Because when you say, what do you want, they give you everything under the bus that they want. They want new radio-controlled mowers. They want new cars. They want new this, new that. Well, in a village that's fiscally stressed as ours, we can't be looking for those things. We need to be taking the hard decisions and making the hard decisions and making sure that we're doing budgets right. We do have a 2% cap that we have to stay under, and yes, we have stayed under that, but we've been borrowing at a high rate. This year, we could possibly be borrowing $3.5 million, which if you look at it, if that was in our budget this year alone, it'd be 35% tax increase. But since it is borrowed, it is a 35% increase over the next 30 years or the time of the repayment. So if it's a 30-year repayment, that's at least 1% every year already budgeted for the next 30 years. We cannot tax our way out of the situation. The village just sent resolutions to Akshar and Lepardo trying to levy fees on nonprofits and add additional taxes to hotels and motels. And we can't afford to do those things because we need those nonprofits to help us out. Seniors can't afford to live on a fixed income in Johnson City. New families cannot afford to move in. People who live here cannot afford to stay. And that's what I say about taxes right now.
Thank you. Mayor Deemie, what would you do in the coming 4 years to minimize tax rate hikes or perhaps reduce the village tax rate?
That's a great question. That's a question that has come up many times in our discussions in regards to taxes. Mr. Holbert has hit on a few issues there in regards to why taxes are up or what we should do. And as you look back on my record, I've voted no on the last 3 budgets because I've been against all the borrowing that the board has wanted to do. This year there was a borrowing $3.5 million. Part of that was a $1.2 million fire truck that I voted against that I felt we don't need at this point. If you really looked at some of the borrowing we did, some of it was necessary borrowing. We haven't done anything with a couple of our one building, our main building, Village Hall, for 30 years. The heating and HVAC is just shot in there. It needs to be repaired. We had a roof issue on the JC Police building that needed to be repaired. Those are high-ticket items. We had to upgrade our water tanks up on the hill because they haven't been touched in 30-plus years. It was a necessary infrastructure need. There was some borrowing for some police vehicles that are going to be covered by grant money. As for cutting services is the only place where or personnel is where we can really save taxes. As for asking the department heads to make a 10% cut, they know what they need to do coming forward. They don't ask for big ticket items. They don't come asking for a lot of vehicles. They know what I expect out of them when it comes time to put in their budgets. We bought 1 garbage truck this year. It gets used on a daily basis. There was some other items in there that we had to borrow for that were items of necessity. But like I said, there was 2 fire vehicles that I felt weren't necessary at this point in time. I work closely with the department heads. I work closely with the board. My first year in office, we did cut the borrowing, but every year since then, the board has agreed to increase borrowing and increase borrowing. I'm not for that. I'm totally against it. I agree. We need to keep our residents here. We need to stay under the tax cap. We need to work hard so we can, hopefully at some point, reducing taxes isn't really a good way to go because in the long run, it'll catch up with you over time. It's best to have small increases, which we've had over the years. We do business. You know, the cost of running the village goes up every year. We have to look at that, what the cost is for salt, fuel, maintenance. There's a lot of things that go into that budget. It's until you sit down and really do one and get into the, you know, the nitty gritty of it, you really don't understand what it takes to do one and where, you know, a lot of this comes from. So it takes a lot of time and effort to get to where we need to be.
Thank you. The next question will be
Can
addressed.
I respond at all?
You may.
If you're, I mean, yes, he voted no on the budget, but yes, these things still have passed. You're 1 vote in 5 as the mayor, but you are the mayor. You're the CEO. You're the team. You're the head of the team. And if you can't get your trustees to follow your lead and they keep insisting on borrowing, your effectiveness as mayor is called into question if you can't get these things squashed down.
Well, not really. I'm 1 vote in 5. Their job as trustees, as they call them trustees, is fiduciary, is to oversee the cost and the money and the funding. I put out there to them a budget. I tell them what I want. The year before last, I cut 3 positions in the fire department, safer positions that they should have let go. That was over $200,000. The board came back and said, no, we're putting those back in. As you said, I'm 1 vote out of 5. I run the village on a daily basis. I oversee the budget once the board passes the budget. So, as I said, I propose the budget to them. They take it and they do what they want to do with it, and then we go from there.
Next question will be posed first to Mayor Deemie regarding crime. Johnson City residents are concerned about the shootings, stabbings, robberies, and burglaries occurring throughout the village. What additional steps would you pursue to address criminal activity in the next 4 years?
As we've discussed this on many occasions, Bob, and what we have done and what we plan on doing going forward. The annual report just came out. I know Mr. Holbert had a sit down with the chief on that for almost 2 hours, I believe. And in regards to that, some of the numbers are looking pretty good now. The number of arrests for drugs has gone way up because we've got more officers now. The SIU unit is working harder in the village, so that's a positive thing. More arrests, less drugs on the streets. My goal is to keep adding officers to the force. We are still understaffed. Right now we have 34 sworn officers, including the chief. We have a new one that'll be starting soon, and that leaves us 1 spot that was budgeted for to bring us up to 36 officers in the near future. My goal is to keep working with the chief, keep giving him what he needs to get the job done, work closely with him, work closely with the residents of the village. You know, they need to, you know, as they do, report things and, as I say, see something, say something. But we work really hard to give the chief, we've got the new body cameras, we got the new laptops. As I said, Chief Dodge is working really hard. Things have changed since he came on board in September 2014. We've got more officers on the street. We've got, like I said, the community action team back in place. We've got the bike patrol out when we can. And as we get staffing up, we will have foot patrol back out there. So I'm still working with him to, you know, better our visibility out there, so, you know, they see that we're out there and taking care of things.
Thank you, Mayor Deemie. Mr. Holbert, what additional steps do you think the village could pursue to address criminal activity that is of great concern to residents?
The additional things I think we could do is some of what Mayor Deemie has said, increase foot patrols, people, not just downtown, but on other streets, park in your car once in a while and go and meeting the residents and knowing who you're protecting and serving. The one things I did want to talk about, he says that the arrests are up, and which is true. I just wanted to say that property crimes are up 5% since 2014. Adult felonies are up 30% since 2014. Reported robberies are up 140%, and total narcotics charges are up 93%. And this is under the last 3 years at least. The couple years before that, under Chief Zukuski, we don't have that great of data because there was a lot of stuff not going on at the time that has changed under Brent Dodge, which is great. And after speaking with the chief, I found out that we have 4 cars on each shift. The 3 cars are split among the 3 different zones: North Side, Main Street, South Side, and a 4th who's the supervisor, who's a floater. The mayor speaks about the CAT team that's in place, which, well, I talked to the chief, and he says right now the staffing only allows that 1 shift per week for 4 hours. He says he advocated for 2 new police positions in the budget this year, but he voted no on the budget, so therefore he voted no on those increases of of police positions. We have our 35th officer. We're looking for our 36th, but we can't hire people because our police department is without a contract. They're $10,000-$12,000 lower paid than anybody around the area. Our chief sent out letters to the top 10 candidates of the recent class, and they all denied even coming in for an interview. So with crime going up and not having a contract, good police officers don't even want to come to the village. And what does that show about our village?
Mayor Deemie, do you have a response?
Well, I do. I mean, the numbers are up because we have more officers out there doing more work. So the numbers are going to be up. There are going to be more arrests. Things are going to change. As for the CAT team, yeah, it's a staffing level, and we have it out there. The more staffing, the better chance we'll have it out there on a more regular basis. As for some of the other comments, yes, I stated when the budget came through, I agreed with the budget. I didn't agree with the borrowing, but unfortunately the two are tied together. So when you vote on the budget and the borrowing, you have to vote on both together. If they voted them separately, I would have been happy to vote yes on the budget, no to the borrowing. That can't be done. So in essence, true, I voted no to up the staffing, but I am fully in favor of adding officers to the force. We need to do that. As for the contract, we have a meeting coming up with the PBA in the next few days in regards to the contract. We think we'll have a good contract at the end of this, couple of meetings we're going to be having. And as for, lower paid, yes, we are, down there, and we're looking at helping that, going forward with the new contract so we can bring in better officers and more, people interested in joining the force because of the pay.
Can I respond?
Yes.
Back to the voting no on the budget and saying that you're for the budget but against the borrowing, and you voted no because of the borrowing. Well, you could have easily voted yes for the budget because you have another chance later on to vote no on the borrowing when it actually comes up when you're going to borrow in the summer or in the fall, like we just had. And then you did vote yes, you did vote no again in the fall for the fire truck and other things, but you could have voted yes to support our men and women in the spring, and then when it came down to the borrowing, you could have said no on that and made the same comment. I'm voting yes on the budget, but I don't agree with the borrowing at the time.
Well, once again, not being in the position, don't understand how it all works. Is if you vote yes to the borrowing and yes to the budget, when we vote to those, you've basically voted yes to that borrowing at that time. Later on, it's just to vote on to move it forward through the process to get the borrowing in place. So once you vote yes on one, you voted yes at that time. So it's a hard process to understand, but until you sit there and go through it, you don't understand how it works.
We're debating issues with the two candidates for mayor of Johnson City, the incumbent Republican Greg Deemie, who has been mayor for 5.5 years, and the Democratic challenger Andrew Holbert, who has been the vice chairman of the planning board recently. And Mr. Holbert, our next question is for you regarding the Corliss Avenue corridor with all the activity that Binghamton University has going on. That part of the village is going to be transformed dramatically. Looking ahead to the next 4 years or so, what specific actions do you think that the village needs to take to ensure that things go as smoothly as possible, given the influx of many new people and potentially many businesses in that area around Corliss Avenue?
That's a great question, and recently there was a meeting with the Binghamton University, Harvey Stanger, an open meeting that was at Village Hall, the Village Court building. He stated that Johnson City needs a downtown urban core development plan, which I would have thought would have been in place by now, seeing that we've known for 4 years that the school is going to be there. Harvey Stanger also stated that they're done buying properties right now. They've bought all the properties they need. They're not going to be investing in any more properties, which has taken about $25,000 off our tax rolls of what the properties were worth before they took them over. I mean, if they were reassessed, I'm sure it'd be a lot more money, but we can't tax not-for-profit buildings. Other things I'd like to see in that area, obviously we need to work on Broad Street. We've had a lot of issues on Broad Street with crime and drugs and absentee landlords and a lot of problems with that. We've had lockdown law almost pulled on some of these guys. He cleaned it up for a few months and then he let people right back in that were just as bad. I'd like to see Main Street worked on a little bit more. We had a Main Street grant a few years ago. I don't think it went far enough. So now we're going back for more money from the state, and we just got a record number of money, so I don't know if they're going to be really willing to give us another high dollar amount. We have a lot of empty stores on Main Street, and in looking what can we do for Main Street and how can we get businesses in there, I've been looking at ways to help these new businesses out, and one thing I've looked at is a way to help out businesses buy buildings and save some money. So what would happen is a person would buy the building. They would have to do a major renovation to the building, a multi-unit building, and they would have to get it not just up to code, not just slap paint on there and fix a few nuts and bolts. They got to go in there and they make a really nice renovation, make it very nice, and bring it up past code and make a very nice building. In return, they would get a tax exemption for a period of time. We just gave a pilot agreement to the large developer for the Century Sunrise building. We can help out the small guys too. I looked at about 7 or 8 buildings that we could help with this. The tax that we would lose is about less than 10 grand. So the 10 grand that we lose in property taxes, making these properties Johnson City tax exempt, I think would be well worth it, because having people in those buildings living and businesses in those business areas, people spending money in there would help us with tax revenue also. So that's what I would think for the downtown corridor and BU campus area.
Mayor Deemie, Corliss Avenue will be undergoing a tremendous transition. It's already underway, and a lot more certainly will be coming up in the next 4 years. What are some of the additional actions that you think Johnson City ought to pursue to make sure that the transition happens as smoothly as possible?
Well, as I've mentioned before, we do have a urban study going on in the Main Street corridor that enhances that goes down through the Corliss Ave area over there. It's a revitalization plan through the Endicott Johnson Brownfield Opportunity Area and also our I District area. The mission of this plan is to manage change, not prevent it, and the plan will describe methods to adapt old buildings to changing needs while preserving their historic character, to identify ways to encourage new development while reflecting on our historic roots. The plan includes preparing reuse plans, design alternatives, marketing illustrations for strategic sites within the area. It's a plan to grow the area so we have something in hand. So as we go forward, looking for more grants, Main Street grants, because once you get some of those grants and you implement them well, they tend to look at that as, you know what you're doing. They're going to give you more grant money. You're more likely. It has nothing to do with the URI and the $500 million that we got. The Main Street grants and those grants are separate from that. And we are going after those grants. We've got other grants in place. We've received some grant money. What I'd really like to talk to, the lockdown, you got to be careful with that now. There was an article from Grant, New York recently on lockdown where that was decided that it's actually a First Amendment right issue, because the municipalities tend to use what the tenants say against the landlord, which is actually against the tenant, so they're afraid to say anything. So a lot of lockdown laws have been shot down right now, so we have to rethink that one. I believe you were talking about the 421M. Yep. As for that, what that really is actually I had a discussion with our tax assessor about that. He had to look into it because it's a fairly new option out there. But what that is really for is the exemption is for 20 years before it's really fully assessed, paying full taxes. It starts after completion of the project, which is the first 12 years at 100%, then steps down from there. They have 3 years to complete their project. So that's 3 more years, a lower assessment, basically 23 years. How that works is, say you have a vacant piece of property and somebody wants to build build something new on there. They could build a new building on there, but for the first 13 years, they're still paying taxes, but based on a piece of vacant property. So you don't lose total taxes, but you could be losing more than $10,000. I'm not sure how that number came up. But the construction is for, what it is basically for, a substantial rehabilitation. And it must take place on vacant, predominantly vacant, or underutilized land, or on land that contains a non-conforming use or a substandard, structurally unsound, or unsanitary dwelling, basically a condemned building. I don't see too many of those on Main Street. There's other areas in the village where this could come into play. It's a good possibility. The exemption is only on the rehabilitated or new portion, so basically there could be a brand new building, as I said. The village would have to designate a benefit area. The board must pass the law by resolution. It's also funded. It must be funded by affordable housing grants, loans or subsidies from a federal, state, or local agency. So, it's, as any grant, that's taxpayer money, out there. So it's something we can look at. It sunsets in 2019, but it's really more for some of these really, really blighted buildings, in other areas of the village, not the Main Street corridor.
Thank you, Mayor Deemie. One of the other areas of serious concern in the village is the retail area, the Oakdale Mall, that for decades has been such a key part for the shopping experience, not just in Johnson City, but for the entire region. People's habits have changed dramatically since the mall opened a few decades ago. Macy's and Sears recently closed their stores in the mall, and there's concern about the future of other small and large tenants at the mall. What can the village, Mayor Deemie, do to deal with the changes that have occurred and those that certainly lie ahead at the mall property?
Well, what we're doing at this point is we're staying in contact with the mall's management staff up there. I have also staying in contact with the county and the Greater Chamber, Broome County Chamber of Commerce, and the IDA in regards to what needs to be done up there, what we can do. It is a private entity. They're very closed-mouthed on what's going on up there. There's only so much you can do. But I am staying in contact with all these entities, making sure that we're in the loop and that, things are happening and that things are being looked into so it doesn't, end up as an empty piece of property. But there are many options for it, down the road. There's always been the talk of housing, medical, multi-use, business park. There's many different ways we can use that piece of property. But I am staying in contact with them and with the local entities that need to be involved with it.
Thank you, Mayor Deemie. Mr. Holbert, what do you think that the village ought to do going forward to try to assist, if possible, with the changes that will be occurring at the Oakdale Mall site?
I think the village needs to do whatever we can do, because the mall property right now is one of our highest property values in the village. So if we lose that property, that's going to probably kill our budget. Or if they severely reduce in taxes on that property because they can't fill their spaces, we're going to lose a lot of money. Not only property taxes, but every time a store closes, we lose sales tax money. So it's a compounding factor. We keep losing stores, we keep losing sales tax money, and it's not something we can afford right now in the village with the way our tax situation is.
Next question will be addressed first to Mr. Holbert regarding blight. What additional actions can be pursued by Johnson City to address the problems posed by abandoned residential and commercial properties?
It's a very, very important topic to Johnson City, and especially the south side where I live. Every street has one or two properties that are an issue. They may not be to the point where they're uninhabited, but we have a lot of landlords who just don't care. They take their money, they deposit their checks, and they just let their buildings go. And when the person moves out, they find someone else moves right in. They just keep cashing those checks. We got to make sure that we're enforcing the apartment inspection law that we have on the books. We got to make sure that code is living up to the agreement that we have with them. And right now, I don't believe they are. I know the mayor is talking with them to get 2 more people that are full-time in Johnson City. I really think we need more than that right now, and something's got to stop, because the south side is going to be lost in a few years if we don't do something. And what I think we could do is get more people involved in code. I think the 2 people is great, but I don't think the town of Union is going to dedicate 2 people to Johnson City. It's the town of Union Code Department, not the Johnson City Code Department, so they might not want to do that. The other thing I think is we have a very capable fire department I have talked to some of their leaders, and they would be willing to help out with code if needed, just like in the village of Endicott. I know that would take contract negotiations, but it can be done if needed, and they're very passionate about the village like we are, and they want to help out the village. I think we can get those things done, and is working as a team to make Johnson City a better place to live.
Thanks, Mr. Holbert. Mayor Deemie, additional steps to tackle blight, both problems posed by abandoned residential and commercial properties.
Well, a little bit on the commercial properties. We do have some growth on Main Street. We do have some businesses in developers that have come in front of the planning board in the last year or so. I mean, Mr. Holbert should know that he's the vice chair of the planning board, and he's always saying that, you know, there's nothing going on Main Street, so he should be aware of some of those things. As for, you know, blight in the village, as I've talked about before, we have what's called our zombie properties law. You know, it's to work with property owners of problem properties to guide them to resources to facilitate property maintenance improvements. Every effort should be made to keep properties in the hands of current owners whenever possible. We also need to develop sustainable strategies for bringing village, town, and county-owned properties back into productive uses, such as affordable housing, which will return these parcels to the village tax base. The program is expected to lower the number of vacant buildings in the village by lowering the number of residents affected by foreclosure and increasing repercussions on property owners who will allow their buildings to sit empty. You know, thanks to our grant writer, we were able to bring this, we were able to bring this in. Now, as we go to code, in regards to code, we have had a discussion with the town and union. They are willing to hire 2 more officers. We need to rewrite the IMA for that, so that just was a recent development. And in regards to code, I had created a code study committee back at the beginning of the year, and I had asked them to look into our code. It's been 5 years since we went to the town and union, so I looked into code, say we need to look at the study, see if it's working, not working, where our problems are, and so forth. And I was asked them to come back with a recommendation on what we need to do, how we need to do it, where the problems are, where we can fix things or not. Mr. Holbert was on that committee. I never got a study report back to me. Trustee Ballas was chair, Mr. Holbert, Mr. Maney, and others from planning, zoning, he's from the planning board, were on that, and they never came back with a completed study saying, here's where our problems are, here's what we need to do. So to have him stand here and say, hey, these are what we need to do, why didn't we have a study completed like I asked?
As you stated, Trustee Ballas was the chair of that committee, and if the report is not back, that I would say that he is the one you should be calling. We have a report that he had basically finished, and I believe he presented to you, and that's where you got the 2 new people from.
Actually, no, that the 2 new code officers was my idea before the plan even started. I told him that's something I would like to see in the plan. Also, I was told by Trustee Maney at the time that you and him weren't happy with the plan that Trustee Ballas came up with, and you guys were developing your own plan and were going to bring that forward to me, and you never did.
I believe Marty and I's plan is in that report.
Well, he said you had a separate plan, so...
The last plan that I had read included the plan between Marty and I, and Marty had put in a plan that would bring the code back to the fire department in whole. I didn't completely agree with it, but as a report, I thought it was valid that we were looking at other ideas other than just keeping it the way it is.
Well, I've asked Mr. Ballas to finish it up. He's still finishing it up. And as I said, I was told there was a separate plan, and we are moving forward in regards to hiring the 2 code officers. And I agree, that's a start. We have to look at it financially because hopefully it'll stay under the cost right now that we're paying for that. But as time goes along, we may have to add the cost. We want to do that. But it's the only way we are going to bring our village back, get a code enforcement going. Thank you, Bob.
We're talking about the important issues facing Johnson City. Looking ahead to the November 7th election, in the studio is the incumbent mayor, Republican Greg Deemie, and his Democratic challenger, Andrew Holbert. Next question directed first to Mayor Deemie regarding new home construction. What, if anything, can be done to encourage the construction of single-family homes in village neighborhoods where vacant lots exist?
Well, it depends on who's out there, who's looking to do the construction. If they feel this is an area they need to do the construction, we're willing to work with them, guide them through the planning, zoning process of what they need to do. New construction, a lot of the vacant properties, numerous ones right now are FEMA properties, so there's really not a heck of a lot you can do with that. Actually, we're looking to hopefully maybe put more vines gardens in, like we just had installed created over on 52 Sherman Street on a vacant property that belonged to the Family Enrichment Network. It's a goal of ours to grow the village, to build the village. It's pretty built out in a lot of areas right now, but there are some opportunities for new construction, possibly, as we stated before, to take some blighted buildings down and put some new construction up. But we're always willing to work with developers, talk to developers, and find out what their needs are and what they'd like to see.
Mr. Holbert, possibility of the village doing much beyond what already exists to encourage single-family home construction?
I think there's a lot we can do. Right now, I don't think people are willing to want to do that because of the way our taxes are, and where we do have open property in areas that nobody right now really wants to build a new home. The reason some of these buildings were torn down is because they're in blighted neighborhoods, and those are some of the worst houses in that area. I mean, we have a brand new house on Floral Ave that was built, and nobody wants it, right across the street from where the fire happened with those 3 boys a couple years ago. It's definitely a step that we need to take. We got to get to. We're losing our tax base. We're losing tax money for not for profits. We need increase of tax base somewhere, and new single family homes would be great. I hope that's something we can work on in the very near future.
Again, in regards to the taxes, the hotel motel tax, I believe that wouldn't be much of an impact. It's a small percentage that could gain us, $80,000 to $100,000. As for the not-for-profits, I really, was not in favor of that because I don't feel we need to, go after the not-for-profits at this point in time. I know everybody wants me to, BU, UHS, and the fact that, okay, they're not-for-profits, they don't pay taxes, they should pay. Well, it's something we need to discuss, and we'll be discussing down the road. In regards to the house on Floral Ave, that is a Habitat for Humanity house, so there's a specific income level of people that are allowed to live in those homes, and they're supposed to actually put sweat equity into those homes when they're built. And I agree. I actually was talking to Code the other day saying, what is going on with 145 Floral Ave? There's nothing going on. We need to get going on this and, take the owner to task. So we are on top of these things, and I agree with you. That's one reason somebody is probably not wanting to move into the area because of that house there, and we are on top of that and saying we need to do something. And I'm willing to work with Habitat for Humanity and what they want to do and need.
I believe at one point recently the Habitat for Humanity did ask for the village's help to identify a resident or someone who would be willing to move into that home. And yes, there is the stipulations of how you are able to be eligible for those homes, but they did ask for help, and if I become mayor, that's my first priority is helping new people get affordable homes in the area.
Next
As I
question.
said, we're willing to work with them and help them in any way we can, and they did reach out to us, yes.
Next question, directed first to Mr. Holbert. Would you support the possible privatization of existing services provided by Johnson City Village government?
I believe most of our services are very valuable and affordable. I'm saying most, not all. We have an issue with the sewage treatment plant right now that other candidates in the city of Binghamton, Tarek Abdelazam, are saying that there could be a 200% raise in our water rates. That scares me a little. I don't think it's going to be that much. I'm hoping it is not that much because that's something we just can't afford, and it's come up to the mayor the last couple meetings. What do you think the raise might be? And he stated that they haven't even looked at it yet. And being the CEO, CFO of the village, is something that I would hope that they're looking at all the time. They get the bills from the sewage treatment plant. They know if they're running a surplus or a deficit, or they know the trends. Are we spending more than we're taking in all the time, So
do you think privatization of the sewage treatment plant is something that Johnson City and Binghamton ultimately might be well advised to look into?
I believe so, yes.
Mayor Deemie, let's look first at the broader question, just generally, of privatization of existing village services. Is there any existing are there existing services that might be appropriate to consider for privatization in the next 4 years?
I agree with Andrew on this. As our services, our departments do a great job for the village. I don't see where that would be a benefit to the taxpayers. Typically, when you privatize something, now that company is actually a revenue-generating company for themselves. They're looking to make money, so the cost of doing business could go up, or the cost to the residents, the taxpayers, could go up. So at this point, it's something we always look at. It's something we think about, but is it something we're looking at right now? No, but I think our departments do a great job as it is.
All right. The next question, in fact, deals with the sewage treatment plant on Vestal Road, and it'll first be directed to Mayor Deemie. That facility is undergoing a major and costly repair and modernization program. What steps do you think might be taken or might be considered to improve the plant's operations and control costs in the future?
Well, actually, that's what the construction will be doing, Bob. It's a great question. The construction will be bringing a plant online that is from the 21st century. It's going to have a lot more automatic controls to it. Things will run a lot cleaner, a lot smoother, a lot more efficient once we're done with this project. So hopefully the cost of running the plant, will decrease at some point. As for Andrew's comments in regards to, cost and not knowing what it is, we haven't looked at the overall, we know what the overall cost is at this point for the project. We don't know a final cost for the project because these projects are huge. I do, keep an eye on our, bills to the sewer plant and whether we're, ahead or behind on these things. That's something we need to do. That's, based on our water sewer rates out there. That's something we as a board need to look at. It's something we need to address in the near future. There are some numbers that have been thrown out in the possible increases to, the rates. Yeah, there probably will be a small increase at some point in order to pay for this project. A lot of it's being bonded, so it's going to be over time. We just received, Binghamton with us, received a $10 million grant towards the construction of the plant. So we're looking at ways to limit the cost of what it's going to take to rebuild this plant. But it is a big project, and, there's going to be some, changes down the road.
Mr. Holbert, aside from the ongoing project, which indeed is supposed to modernize and fix some of the things that really need fixing at the facility, are there other steps that you think could be done to improve the plant's operations and control future cost increases?
I don't think we should be looking at other steps right now when the plan that's in place right now is not even finished. The current plan's way over budget, and unfortunately, Binghamton is the lead agency on it, so we have limited say over everything. We still have say, but we're not the lead project manager on this project. So while Binghamton's running up the cost over there, we're going to be paying for it at some point. And yes, the modernization of the plant is going to help the cost in the future. But also, with the project going so far over budget right now, we're going to have to pay for that with somewhere. So I don't think we should be looking at what can we do next when we're not even finished with what's not even done now.
I've been able to talk about several topics. I didn't get around to a few topics that I had anticipated, but I think we have covered a few important areas in depth. Now, as we close the hour, it's time for final statements. And the first of our closing statements will go to Andrew Holbert.
Thank you, Bob, for having us. I appreciate having us on the time here, and thank you to Greg Deemie for a good debate and us discussing our vision for the future of Johnson City. Today, Greg and myself presented our cases of why we should be mayor. Greg is trying to make it seem like his experience over the last 5 years is invaluable and the reason he should be mayor. If you go down and drive down Main Street right now, is it better than 5 years ago? No. If you go to our parks and take a look at our fields, our play structures, our tennis courts, and our basketball courts, are they better than 5 years ago? Again, no. If you drive down much of the south side and surrounding areas, are our homes getting better? Is the crime being reduced? Is blight and zombie properties being taken care of? Again, I say no. Is your home more valuable than when you bought it? No. Over the last 5 years, our village has not got better. So I ask the residents of Johnson City, what good is Greg Deemie's experience as mayor if he has not been able to address the most pressing issues in Johnson City? I believe it's time for change, and I respectfully ask for your vote for mayor on November 7th.
Andrew Holbert, the Democratic challenger to Republican incumbent mayor Greg Deemie. Mr. Deemie, your closing statement.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Andrew. Typically, it was a very negative closing statement by Mr. Holbert over there in regards to all the issues. I'm not going to, try and address them all, but we have tackled all those issues. We've done a lot over time. Revitalization takes time, takes years. You don't see change right away. There's a lot of change going on. Some of it you don't see, some of it you do see. It's not something that happens overnight, as I said before. So again, thank you for this. After decades of decline in our village, we are finally on the upswing. The wheels are in motion, and it would be a shame to upset the momentum we are gaining by a change in leadership. In the past 5 years, I've made many improvements to our village. I reinstated a full-time chief to fight our crime. Now our drug arrests are on the rise, which means less drugs on the streets. I hired a full-time grant writer to secure the funding we need to assist in economic development. I work side by side with the persons responsible for the large-scale developments, the BU Pharmacy School and the Regan Century Sunrise development. I work closely with the agency, the County IDA, and County Planning to secure anchor properties in need of redevelopment and/or demolition. Now is not the time for a change in leadership. Our village needs an experienced leader with the ability to oversee the large-scale construction and pending development that is occurring. My opponent does not have the necessary management experience, and setbacks would take place while he adjusts to the fast pace and many responsibilities of the mayor's office. We cannot afford to lose the opportunities we currently have while he receives on-the-job training. I am well respected by state and local leaders of all parties, and together we are getting the job done. Community pride is back. Just this past month, we had Mural Fest in Floral Lab Park. Vines created their first community garden outside of Binghamton on Sherman Street in conjunction with Family Enrichment Network. And J.C. Rhodey adopted Jennison Park. Let's continue to work together for the betterment of Johnson City. We need to all share ideas, create plans and goals, and a vision. The wheels are in motion for a great future. Let's keep working together to create that community we can all be proud of. I am committed to working with everyone to make our village grow and to create a more sustainable and stable future for generations to come. I have the experience we need to get the job done. All I need is your vote on November 7th. So I respectfully ask for your vote on November 7th. And thank you all and have a great day.
Greg Deemie, Andrew Holbert, thank you so much for being with us and talking about some of the most important issues facing the village of Johnson City. And I wish you well in the remaining days of the campaign. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
The news is next, then Open Lines. On this Thursday morning, you're listening to News Radio 1290, WNBF, and WNBF.com.